Coffee, Paul.
Hair and makeup.
Paul, how are you, Paul? Hey, Rob Brown, Brendan Martin, Calla, Storm Central. Look, we've got a lot to cover today. We've got the ADs on, Coach Matt Dean, John Hartwell, AD at ULM, Gary Harris, Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9, Tider Insider TV. Look, we are 16 days away, 384 hours. Smash that subscribe button. Let's get as many subscribers as we can. You'll get an automatic bing every morning.
Bing. And you also got a QR code right here. You can smash that with your phone, but don't smash it like I smashed my phone and get a new one. And it's bad.
You'll have to get a new one and spend half a day at AT&T and have no idea what you did. But anyway,
no idea.
It's fun.
No, that's gone.
Allow notifications on Android and iPhone. Get pen and paper handy. In the next hour, we're going to cover all 16 SEC teams. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to get some questions that only ADs and coaches can tell us. We'll be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Matt Dean, John Hart will be on with us in a couple of minutes. I'm sure he walks in every morning to a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane as an AD with 17 sports and about 400 student athletes. Matt, here's a question, and we've been talking. We're all over the SEC every day. I guess the biggest question I have is, what happened with offensive linemen? They are the hardest commodity to get hold of. There may be, as Jason Caldwell says, 25 a year, really good ones. So I hear yesterday on my friend Chuck Oliver's show that's on right after us, Southern Sports Today, 10 to 12 Central, Monday through Friday. Georgia Tech supposedly has inked a deal with a 5-star offensive lineman, 3 years, $2.4 million, $800,000 a year, which begged the question that Heath Klein, Chuck's producer, and Chuck were asking. What about the guy who's been a 2-year starter at Texas or Arkansas or Oklahoma? Is he now going to go, well, I think I need 1.2 a year? Do you think that's a true deal? Because we know one thing about Georgia Tech. They sell more pocket protectors on campus than any school in America. And they've got more millionaires per capita than any university in America.
Good morning, guys. It's great to be back on the show. Brendan, I'm hearing from afar. I hope your house situation gets fixed soon.
No, it's not. It sucks.
I apologize. I didn't know the details, so I just kind of heard that out there. So your question, Rob, here's the thing. I can't confirm 3 years, $2.4 million. I mean, John knows these are ridiculous numbers. I will tell you this. I've always felt like this, even when I was a younger guy, that development of your offensive lineman is the most crucial thing to maintaining a high successful football program. So a lot of these guys go where they think they can get coached really well for 3 years, 4 years, whatever, and go into the league. Because if you look at it, I think the average on the running backs in the NFL is maybe 4 to 5 years. But
maybe,
but O-linemen can have a decade's worth of career a lot of times, just because. Now, there's a lot of knee problems, lower body issues. We get that. But I just think right now we're in such an arms race. Nothing surprises me. And it does lead to the whole market. If I'm hearing, let's say I'm in the Texas O-line meeting room and I hear this via X, I probably ask a couple questions about it. But at the end of the day, you want to compete for a national championship. And right now, most of the schools, well, probably about 5 schools in the SEC right now at least have a shot at that. So I'm pretty sure all those SEC athletes that are very special are getting paid.
Yeah. John Hartwell, AD at ULM, I was saying, you walk into work every morning. Of course, you've got that 17 teams, 17 coaches. You're covering a lot of ground. We all know about NIL. It isn't going anywhere. But I was just bringing up the thing about Georgia Tech, allegedly a $2.4 million three-year deal for a freshman coming in out of high school, unproven. Listen, a person with a degree in medicine, a neurosurgeon, does not start out at $800,000. They start out as a resident making about $42,000 a year. We've lost our minds. So here's the next question I'm going to ask. This House settlement, and it's debatable, and this is a question from Floyd R. Turbo in Lincoln, Nebraska. Floyd says, and he texted me, he says, is the House settlement a one-off deal for $21 million a year, or does it go on and on and on? Where do we go? The talking heads had it right. You may ask yourself, how did I get here? Bump music, we can't do it, but I can't sing. But John.
Yeah, that's the baseline, and it increases annually from there on. So it's here to stay. And, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago briefly. You bring up the student athlete. I'm still calling them that, although, that term becomes tougher and tougher.
Yes.
$3.2 million at Georgia Tech. Here's what happens is college coaches are having to become more and more like NFL coaches in managing the room. And when I say that, obviously in the NFL, guys are not all paid the same thing. There's vast differences in that position room as to what they make. So you've got to be a psychologist and learn what buttons to push to get those kids to come together to play as a team and where it's we, not me. And I'm telling you, that is what is making coaching at the collegiate level, especially at the highest level, more and more difficult.
Question, you got a good one. Bryant Vincent came over from UAB. Are you finding now that we have NIL as an AD, when you go out fundraising, there's more money than you realized, and a lot of these people, quite frankly, have never been asked, and they're like, yeah, I'll help. No one's ever asked me before, because I know from experience that happens a lot.
Yeah, you find that in some cases, which has helped us. But then you also have that segment, and I think this is no different than what Charles Barkley said several weeks ago. Said, "Hey, Auburn University, ask me for anything you want to, but don't ask me to put exorbitant amounts of dollars in players' pockets." And that's the same thing, I think, regardless if you're at ULM or Auburn or Ohio State. There is a certain faction of your fan base who, just is still having trouble wrapping their thoughts around NIL and pumping this money into, in a lot of cases, what is a 1 year or a 9-month deal. Because if you think Johnny or Jane, and you're seeing it more, excuse me, in women's sports too, if you think they're going to go to the highest bidder initially, and you don't think that they're not going to do that over and over for the next 4 or 5 years, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. Well, one of my friends said something very prophetic. He was in the Army in Afghanistan, and he said every morning we would get up and we would go on patrol, and we would take laundry sacks full of U.S. cash and pay off tribal chiefs. 2 weeks later, they're shooting at us because we got outbid. It's the same thing. Matt Dean, we're looking at it. You think about this. You go to a really wealthy person and you just ask them for money. You better have a well-written, articulated plan. And wow, the puppy ate a shotgun shell. Where'd she get that? Oh, sorry. At least it didn't blow her head off. But Matt, you got to think, how many times can you go to the well and ask these people for money if you don't have teeth in the contracts? I mean, here's the thing. The NCAA is Pontius Pilate. That's who they are. They're spineless, okay? As long as you let the tail wag the dog, nothing will change. But I want some input from the AD angle.
So John and I haven't had this conversation, but I've had some other conversation with Division I ADs, and I do think, unfortunately, what we're going to see coming is this distribution of money. If you got that money to give out to the athletes, probably going to go, John, to the revenue producing sports, and you're going to see down the road some Olympic sports that may even go to almost like a Division III model at Division I schools, because there's just not enough money to go around. And we're going to see some equity and possibly Title IX suits from our women's athletes saying, hey, you're giving the old lineman this amount of money. What about the gymnast? Now, I know the LSU gymnast is a different category, but, it just raises so many equity questions for me, even at my level. And I think we're heading to something that's very unsustainable. And it's been that way for a while. And going back to the donors, we have donor fatigue here at Rhodes College. John, I'm sure you're experiencing that a little bit at ULM. And they want their money to go to some things that benefits the whole student athletes, not just one student athlete. That's what I'm saying, All
right, John, here's a question for you. Florida, the Gators just built the Hefner Center, probably spent about $100 million. Auburn, the Woltoltz Center, $90-something million. So did they build those just in the nick of the wrong time? Because at the end of a recruiting visit, aren't the questions just basically how much do I get and when do I get it? Facilities are great.
I think that's that's a realistic part of it. And I think, again, when we talk about, what does this evolve into in the next 3 to 5 years? Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 25? Is it 30 schools who can truly go, who have the financial wherewithal and the donor base to be able to be all in on everything, whether it's the increased number of scholarships that are allowable, whether it's the facilities, all of these things. And I'll be candid with you. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day who's a Big 12 athletic director. He said, there's no way we can do this. We can't do it all. And again, this is somebody at the Power 4 level who said, hey, we've got to, right off the top of the pile, take 20 to 22 million in year one. We've got to do that. We've got our reduction for the next 10 years and our, distribution. We've got all of these escalating costs. We've got to go out and help, fundraise for the collective for NIL money. There is no way we can do this all. And again, that's coming from the highest level.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, at our level, what our vision is we're going to prioritize student athlete welfare. We're going to be in the NIL game. We're not going to be crazy in the NIL game, but we're going to do what we can. And going back to the NIL thing, I think you're going to see a pendulum shift somewhat from people just throwing money into NIL to seeing it shift a little bit towards donors and people who have an affinity for your program, who also have businesses who can truly look at an advertising angle, to be able to utilize student athletes. Is it your, I'm not saying that's necessarily going to help out the offensive lineman, but do you have, a quarterback, a punter, whoever that may be, recognizable to your fan base, and hey, I'll use them in some endorsement ads, or whether it's you have an automobile come. But again, that becomes more and more difficult if you only have kids at your place for 1 year and then they're bouncing to whoever the highest bidder is.
Yeah. See, it seems like nobody in the NCAA wants to stand up and man up and say, you can't do that. You ain't going to tell us what to do. Because at the end of the day, the fans own college athletics. Without their money and their support, the party's over. That's going to be interesting. All right. Want to switch gears. Looking at this college
Rob,
football.
Sorry. I was just going to interject one other thing, because I think we would be doing a disservice if we don't. Again, this applies to such a small percentage of student athletes, even at the Power 4 level. The distance runners or your swimmers, that are maybe not Olympic caliber, but they're really good. They score points for you in a meet. Yeah. These kids aren't getting crazy NIL deals. They are still doing it for the love of the game and the opportunity to get an education. And what's really, tough for me to swallow is the wheel is being recreated for this very small percentage. And it's almost like this vast majority we're throwing out with the bathwater. And that, somewhere, and I know I'm a part of that, we've got to stand up and say, whoa, hold on. We can't throw out all of this that is absolutely great about college athletics, has been for many years, just to satisfy this small percentage.
Exactly. And, you look at the Olympic medal totals, the United States and China tied. Now, that one high jumper who ran track at Alabama, he tied for the gold with the other guy. And instead of sharing the gold, which I would never do, they had a jump off. And the Alabama guy lost the jump off. And Gary Harris talked about it on Tider Insider TV Tuesday night with Rodney Orr. He goes, and if he'd have won that gold, the United States would have had 41 gold medals to China's 40, but he didn't. So blame it on Alabama. I mean, come on. Gary was having fun with that. But other total medals, United States ran away with it. Well, that's directly traceable to our great college athletics and all the sports, okay? Now, I'd like to see Mike Tyson in the ring with some of the people that fought in the Olympics. That would be hilarious. At 57 years old, you couldn't pay me $1 billion to get in the ring with the guy for 15 seconds because you'd be a vegetable the rest of your life drinking out of a straw. But anyway, guys, I'm with you. At some point, like, what are we paying forever? I mean, what about the student that says, hey, man, I was in college. I was on the front page of the Birmingham News at the Iron Bowl. I want my royalties. You wait till that comes, because let me assure you, it's coming. Guys, top 25 preseason college football. As an AD, you think about Florida. Everybody's talking about Billy Napier. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think Florida, if they had Missouri's schedule, might even be a top 25 team preseason. Everybody gets caught up in logo fever. That's what Cole Kubelik and Roman Harper call it. Looking at the schedule, are ADs from both of y'all can speak with a lot of credibility on this. Are ADs going to be more likely with this $21 million that you got to pay from the get-go to say, we're going to give that guy a little more time. We don't have an extra $20 or $30 million of cash laying around to buy him off or to pay him to go away. I mean, I still, to this day, Auburn, there should be an investigation for giving Brian Harsin his $15 million buyout because dereliction of duty. That's the book I'm going to write. He failed to recruit. He failed to really do anything. And he went to the Joe Stalin School of Charm and Wit. But I digress. But somebody want to answer this?
Rob,
I'm on a roll.
Rob, you guys got who you want in there. Let's let Brian Harsin be. Okay.
But $15 million is a lot of money.
Rob, there's a lot of factors that you don't realize. And I'll say another thing in defense of head coaching, because I'm a former head coach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of equity and sweat equity that he put into to be able to get that job. Whether that was a bad hire or not, I can't debate that. I agree with you. Let it go. You got Hugh. You got the best guy in America, according to Hugh, so you got him. So let
me tell you a funny story about that.
Right?
Hughes, one of his security guys said, I've never worked for someone in my life that's hard. He says 4:00 in the morning. He's like, hey, we got to be down somewhere to have breakfast with a recruit or something. I'm with you. I'm kidding, but
listen, Rob. There's a lot of guys that are up 4:00 in the morning working at that level. That's number one. Number two, let's go to Billy Napier for a second. I think you talk about an important game one. I believe they got Miami in the Swamp. The culture of winning starts week one. If they can beat Miami, who some publications think have a great roster prime for 10-plus wins, that may be schedule-based too. You got to get kids believing in what you do. And if you beat Miami, you never know. You never know because it's a week-by-week proposition. That's what coaches sell. I'm going to give him a break. Now, if he loses at home to Miami, it could be it. But I'm just telling you, that first week's very important.
And I think it's dangerous to play a team like Florida they hear all this stuff. But I think talent-wise, they're number 9 on the Blue Chip Index, 63% 4- and 5-star on the roster. That's pretty impressive. And John Hartwell, if you were the AD at the University of Florida, and this is going into year 3 with Billy Napier, what would you be saying? What are goals? You want to see at least 6 or 7 wins and fight and showing signs of progress versus, in all the games when you're not supposed to win, you're not even competitive. Then, as Rosanna Dana used to say on Saturday Night Live, you got a problem, Dan.
I do think, and Scott Strickland, I have a ton of respect for him down there at the University of Florida. Has done an outstanding job both at Mississippi State and at Florida. But here, my personal philosophy when you're evaluating a coach, wins are important. And again, the higher the pay, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And so, I know Gator Nation is not really patient there, but you do look at trajectory of the program. Are we moving in the right direction? And again, that's difficult now because, you used to could say pre-transfer portal NIL, you could say, well, hey, this team won 6 games, 7 games, but hey, there's a lot of underclassmen. There's a lot of freshmen and sophomores playing on this team, and the future is very bright. Hell, the future right now is you can't count on that because of the transfer portal. You may totally flip your roster. So, and I also think that goes back to, is it 20, 25, 30, 35 schools who can be all in, and University of Florida is obviously one of those that, I think it's contrary. I think there is less patience from a fan base because they're saying, hey, we're doling out all this money for NIL and this portion of the universities or the athletic department's money is going for NIL. And now you're coming to us as donors to help fill some of these gaps. Win right away. And so I think as opposed to being more patient with coaches because of that, I think at that very highest level that fan bases, which force presidents and athletic directors in some cases to make decisions, will become less tolerant, and it may be even a quicker trigger.
Yeah. Let me say something about one of our sponsors. Both of y'all as ADs and coaches know this. Exo Armor, based in Auburn with a national and global reach, went down there 3 weeks ago today. Dr. Waller May and I went and got the tour at the Auburn Research Park. They make these pads, braces, and casts using 3D printers. And guys, let's say you're at ULM Roads, wherever you are in the country. You have an athlete that jams a wrist or something in the first quarter. They can fire in the coordinates. The 3D printer comes back as you being a subscriber of the service, and they print off a cast, and you're back out in the third quarter. That actually is happening. Sarah Cooley is the director of marketing out in Portland, Oregon. She is a Duck, by the way, and I told her about Tyler. She's a big-time Duck. I told her, I said, you got to come on the show. But they'll do the demonstration and walk you through it. When we saw this, guys, you pay for the service every month. It's not that expensive, and you can print off these non-invasive casts and braces and all. And both of y'all, I'm going to send you Sarah's number after the show, I would definitely give her a call and just say, hey, I saw, I'm on sidelines with Rob, but I want to hear about this. She'll walk you through a virtual demo. It's really, really incredible. And again, I know the sacrifices coaches make. Matt, as a coach, even if you know you're getting $20 or $30 million, is it possible to put that aside and feel like, God, I wanted to win? Because Billy Napier, you pick the coach. Mark Stoops is a different deal because the standards are not as high at Kentucky. But kind of take us inside the mindset of a coach at a place like Florida, Billy Napier, and the scrutiny he's under with over 500,000 living alumni plus Gator Nation, which is pretty damn massive.
I think this has been said before, guys. In my opinion, when you're making the amount of money as a head coach that a lot of the SEC coaches are, they want to buy me out, come find me. I'll sign the deal. Okay. That's not pressure, because then I'll turn around and I'll speak with Rob Brown about how we want to invest this money so I don't have to work again. Yeah. There's a lot of people.
Bring it on.
Pressure. I will say this about coaches in today's world, and I even, I'm very impressed. I've never met Coach Vincent John, but just in a short period of time, what you guys got going on there, and you have to play a couple of those guarantee games. You just hope your roster doesn't get beat up, but hopefully in conference play, you can see that start on an upward spiral. But the thing about being a head coach in this industry is you really have a shelf life. People don't forget the year before Saban went to Alabama, when he was one of the worst coaches in the NFL record-wise, right? Maybe not the worst, but you know what I'm saying? He went back to Alabama, hit it timing is everything. Timing is everything. And it's kind of unfair to Coach Napier right now, because John's right with his last assessment. Usually, we're worried about looking at progress. We got some young kids. We're going to be, in 2 years, be really good. That doesn't matter anymore, because you have to come in as a head coach. You have to manage the portal, and you still have to produce a first-year class that you will develop. Unfortunately, at John's level, if you do a good job of that first-year class, you may be losing those kids in 2 years. So but you have to have that mentality from the start, knowing I got to tap into the JUCO ranks, right? I got to look at the portal on my end, which is a different view than on the other end, right? So you have to have someone with so much energy now to do this. And then when they step in front of that mic at a press conference, they can't fumble the ball. They got to take accountability. When a team loses, they got to take accountability for the performance. They can't make excuses. No one wants to hear that. I work for a Hall of Fame legend. When we win, it's all the players. We lose, it's on us. If you have that mentality as a leader, no matter what you do, people will run through a wall for you, i.e. your players, and that's what you got to have.
I agree. John, here's the question I have for you. The lack of accessibility that so many people, Ron Higgins was on with us yesterday, and he was on fire talking about it. Love Ron. And he was so right. And Buddy Martin was watching, and he said, solid gold. But, if I were you at ULM, I would open up practice. I would sell, practice time for people. Hey, buy the package. You can come watch us practice. I would go old school. If I were trying to build something, I'd say, you know what? I'm going to go back to the way it used to be. And then the more people get to know Bryant Vincent and you and the coaches, they're going to go, that's my family. I can't just turn on them, because if you're a financial advisor and you just call your clients to sell them something and you never talk to them again, when the market falls apart, they're going to leave your ass. Okay? You better get to know them. But what about that possibility, John Hartwell? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm asking.
I'll give you a little snapshot of that. And a variation of that is exactly what we're doing. But part of this, as we're trying to build this thing with Coach Vincent, we have created what's called the Circle of Excellence. And again, at our level, it's totally different. But in this Circle of Excellence, it costs you $1,000 a year, not for tickets or anything else, but it's basically the core circle of our football program that gets you access to practice anytime, does all these things. That money strictly goes to nutrition for our football players, which we need to supplement from our regular scholarship budget. But our stadium was such, and this was really not a thing, which was a little unusual to me with Coach Bowden. Our stadium in the end zones is not totally bowled. So, and the fences had no, fence coverings or tarps or anything on there. And Coach Vincent's like, hey, people may not think up front, oh, it's ULM, we don't have to worry about them. He said, I promise you, we get 2 games in and people are going to say, hey, how can we gain an edge on this? So we've, put up, or in the process of putting up some tarps, logo tarps and things that are going to dress up the stadium. And, oh, by the way, give some privacy to practice too. So that's one of the things that we're doing, but he is creating, a circle that, not just people who are ULM alums, but, folks in the community and surrounding areas. And he's doing it the right way. Again, the honeymoon's still on for him. We haven't played. We're 2 weeks from kick tonight versus Jackson State. But I'm telling you, and I'm not saying this because I'm the AD, but be bullish on the Warhawks. Hey, and I'll tell you this. So the CBS thing that came out last week had us at 134. Had us the dead last. I'd say DFL, but I know this is a family program in college. In college football, and they are using that, our guys are using that as, motivation, because I'm telling you, this team is going to be much different than anybody's seen around here in a while.
Well, and I like hearing that, but I just, Ron was talking about, you got a 19-year-old kid standing there saying, you don't have to answer that question. And, the media has a job. Not to cover and lie for people in power, but to tell the truth. That's what they're there for, a loyal and free press. And I just think that the more accessible, like, it's so cool when I go over there to see Matt at Rhodes, and the football coach will come sit down and tell. That's pretty damn cool, because I'll tell people, I'll say, man, that's really cool that Coach Duncan comes over there. Again, everybody's all afraid. Like somebody said, like, you're the first one to ever, I think Ron said that yesterday, you're the first one to ever run the toss sweep. Wow. It's all about when you run it in the games. That's the key. Hey, Gary Harris is on with us right now, Tide 100.9. I know, John, stay with us if you can. And Matt, you've got a Zoom at 8:55, but let's bring Gary Harris in. There we go. Gary Harris, WVUA Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa. I watched Tider Insider TV, Gary, and I was referencing, and Dr. David Arnold talking about the high jumper from Alabama, tied for the gold. They didn't want to share it, so they did a jump off. Dr. Arnold said, Rob, he didn't lose the gold. He won the silver. But that's the United States overall won more medals than anybody. But Gary, was watching your reports about Alabama practice and all, and Ron Higgins yesterday was on a roll about accessibility and all. Is it different so far? I know we asked this question a lot, but is it different, your accessibility to Alabama football practice and all? I'm sure it is compared to when Nick Saban was there, but everybody's going to be different.
Yeah, it's obviously we have more access now. Pre-COVID, and I was walking up the stairs there. Pre-COVID, we had a good bit of access to practice with Coach Saban. Now, media opportunities were always limited with players, and there were no assistant coaches other than before the season, and then if you made it to the playoff or a big bowl game or something like that, where it was mandated by the bowl. But once COVID hit, they closed practices, obviously, and we never got back in. And then this year, in the spring, there was much more access, and there's been a lot of access this fall. Even on days where you're not allowed in practice, they still do media availability after practice. Like yesterday, there was no practice viewing, but then they had, the offensive coaches, Sheridan and Shepard and a couple of players. So, there's much more access. Now, again, We'll see how they handle it once the season starts, because the media schedule right now is laid out just for fall camp. So we'll see what it's like going forward. I'm assuming that there'll still be practice viewing periods unless there's something that happens that upsets the coaching staff. And there's already been a couple of things I know that they've not appreciated from what type of information is put out. But as you were saying, I was listening. I didn't realize my mic was muted when I was walking up the stairs. But it is a free press, and you have a lot of, and I'm not. This is not breaking news, but there's a lot of when we were coming up, there was traditional media, there was newspaper, there was television, there was radio, and that was about it. And now there's so many outlets, and a lot of these outlets are subscription based, whether a YouTube channel or a website, and their income is built around either views or subscriptions, and so they're going to try to generate that's business. So to think that, and I'm not trying to say that the reporting's bad, but I'm just saying that to think that they're going to report the way a newspaper beat writer reported 30 years ago probably isn't the same way of reporting now. I mean, they are trying to generate hits, and you don't always do that by just saying basic info. Plus, people are bored by that anyway. They want to know if a guy's not in there at a position with the first team, why, and all this stuff. So there's a different style of reporting, and I think that has caused conflict between these programs and the media. But the board seems committed to allowing us to have access. So we'll see how it goes going forward. Yeah.
John, I know you've got to go. Let people know how they can keep up with you. I always love having you on. And as an AD, your job never stops.
Yeah, guys, enjoyed it as well. ULMWarhawks.com. A lot going on. Actually, Kickoff, our official start. We've had a couple of exhibition matches, but our women's soccer team plays at home tonight against Arkansas Pine Bluff to kick off the 24-25 athletic year. We tee it up, as I mentioned, 2 weeks from tonight against Jackson State here at home, the beginning of the Bryant Vincent era. And as always, guys, enjoy being on John_Hartwell at X. And you guys have a great day.
Will do, man. Thanks, see you next Thursday. Gary, Matt, you heard what Gary said about accessibility and all. I just think that fans, and also though writers, if you cross that line, something that's said off the record, or guys, I would appreciate y'all, not talking about this for a couple of days. That you're toast. Hey, look at that one, Rumble Boxing Gym. How you fight is how you live. Check out these QR codes to all of our sponsors, and you can find them, of course, on the website at sidelines.live. And Hewlett and Dunn, want to say this real quick. They've got tons of stuff coming in. I was out there last week. 11 big boxes came in. Some days 20 or 30 boxes come in. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They got over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. Again, I just got some made. Greater kudu, which is a big, huge animal over in Africa. It's kind of like an elk, but they've also got them made out of ostrich, python, anaconda, wild boar, buffalo, elephant, you name it. They've got them all, boots out there. The second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. You can order from anywhere, HewlettandDunn.com. And they've also got the best looking duck strap I've ever seen. It's made by, I think, some Amish people. It is. No, it's not Amish people, but it looks like something they would made. And it'll hold 6 limits of ducks. I mean, it is incredible. HewlettandDunn.com on the square in Collierville, Tennessee. Matt, what about that, what Gary said, the way the press was 30 years ago versus where they are today? Do we have to keep going further away from what we used to do, or can we go back?
Many people don't know this, but I was an old broadcast news journalism major at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, back in my college days. And I grew up working at WHO radio. We did Saturday Sports Show. I was the guy cutting highlight tape. And, the one thing I love about being on with Gary is just a true professional. And I think the story this year in the SEC, no matter what you want to say about performance on the field, when you lose a legendary coach like Nick Saban, the GOAT, best of all time, people are going to be under the microscope every week with everything that Coach DeBoer does. And it's not fair, but that's just the way we are. And a lot of that is because social media. Social media never existed when I was a student athlete or when I was a coach until the later stages of my coaching career. And I do think watching his Washington teams play the last 2 years, I'm just really impressed with his demeanor on the sidelines, because the one commonality, and I'm not saying he's Nick Saban, but like, he doesn't get rattled too much. Now, I know there's some times when Saban got upset with his staff, and he pull the headsets off. I get that, but I think DeBoer has got that mentality that you need to have as a head coach, replacing the best of all time. I'm just curious every week, like if they lose a game, and when that happens, how is he going to react? How is the media going to react? And probably more importantly, how is the fan base going to react? Because it's, we're going to have that the world is ending mentality, but that people have to be realistic close to in today's college football to help him. 10-2 in the SEC gets you in the football playoffs. It does. So I think that's the mentality that I think he probably has as a head coach. He knows, listen, we got our goals. Probably the first goal is to win the regular season. The second goal is to win the SEC championship, and then we're going to win the playoff. But you have to readjust your goals as a head coach. So whenever you lose that first game, that's going to be where he gets his money's worth with his student athletes, is how he handles that locker room and how he handles the media after that first loss.
Yeah. Gary, I was watching you and Rodney. I mean, you really are. I mean, we're the same age. You're a professional. It's so cool. Hats off to the big national guys, but the local guy, y'all just, and it infuriates me. Ron Higgins was on the show yesterday. He said, you'll have all the local guys around, say at LSU practice, and somebody from ESPN comes in, walks to the front of the line. It's like, hey, man, the line's back here. And, well, we got to do it for the national image. Your local people can put you out nationally. And that's where I've got a real problem. That's what Sidelines is doing, is I want Tyler Insider TV and your radio show on our network. We're redoing our website here in the next month, Gary. And what I'm building is you can fly over at 40,000 feet, and see a lot, but you want to drill down local on each of the 16. And hey, Matt, do yourself a favor, and everybody watching this show, watch Tyler Insider TV, 6:30 p.m. Central, Tuesday nights. Two guys that worked their asses off. Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, since 1996. That's when he started that. And Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, does a great show right after us every morning, and also Channel 23 sports anchor. And you've trained a ton of interns, Gary. Your attention to detail, you're every bit as good and better than these national guys. That's what I'm with Matt. You're a professional, and it shows. And also, we think we got to splatter crap against the screen and hope it sticks for clicks to some click farm in India or China or Turkmenistan or whatever. There's nothing wrong with being a professional.
Well, I appreciate it, Rob, and getting back to what Matt was saying as well. I think that with DeBoer, there has been and again, Coach Saban is a legend, obviously an icon, and he knew what he was doing. And when he got here, the program was coming off of some lean years, and he had a plan and he stuck to it. He knew exactly how he wanted to do everything, and part of that, I think, was having letting the local media have access. But there certainly was a plan to make this program national and to get the type of national publicity that he felt it needed to recruit nationally. And so that's kind of the way that it was done here. There was a priority for national media. I can remember meeting with Sports Information about trying to get, a one-on-one interview, and being explained to me that, the time that it takes to do 10 local interviews is just not something that Coach Saban's interested in, when he can do one national interview and canvass the entire country. So getting access to him was a lot more difficult than it is to get access to this coach. This coach, I think, welcomes the local media, appreciates the local media in a different way than Coach Saban did, and has reached out to us in a different way. As I said, I've already, had a one-on-one sit-down interview with him. I've been in 2 off-the-record meetings with him, and Coach Saban did some off-the-record meetings when he got here too. But I do feel like Coach DeBoer really values the local media, and maybe that's because even in Seattle, Washington, Washington football is big, but you have the Seahawks and you have the Mariners, and obviously in Fresno, California, it's you rely on local media, and certainly at the when he was offensive coordinator at the University of Indiana and as a head coach at the at the lower level. So he seems to appreciate that type of coverage on a day-to-day basis. And to what you guys were saying, and again, I'm not in competition with the national guys, man. They're incredible. That's why they're there. But again, if you're interviewing somebody about Alabama who's based in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Bristol, Connecticut, or Los Angeles, California, their views are based on what they're reading or what they're talking to. They're not here like we talk about with feet on the ground. So I do think local coverage gives you more insight into that particular program. Now, if you ask me, I have opinions on South Carolina football and LSU football and Texas football, but I'm not there. I can give you my opinion, but I can give you more than just an opinion on Alabama football because I'm here, and that's the value of local. When you talk to Ron Higgins about LSU, or you talk to the various beat people that you talk to, me included for Alabama, you get insight from someone that lives there and covers the program daily, and I do think that's very valuable.
Well, and Matt, I know you've got to go, so say what you're going to say, and then let people know how they can follow you. But this is great insight, and Matt, I'm glad you brought it up.
No, I'm looking forward. Gary, I'm going to try to watch that next Tider Insider TV on Tuesday. I'd love to check it out. Rob, that's good information. And just as a follow up, if you track Coach DeBoer's career, and you mentioned, I think it was NAI where he started, Gary. I believe.
It was.
In
Sioux Falls.
That's right, which borders my home state of Iowa. I think, and I'm not saying us lower level guys get this more than the bigger guys, but when you start there and you build up, I think you kind of have a natural tendency to make sure you take care of your own first. I really do. And I think you look at his development, and when he goes to Indiana, I think that was, if you go back, I'm a Big Ten guy, and what he did with Michael Penix on the front end, he goes to Fresno, then coaches him on the back end, is pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. I think he'll do a great job for that quarterback room. I think the offense will be elite. We already know they got tremendous roster. I love their offensive line. But like anything, it goes down to scheduling. In some of those tough road venues, can they win close games?
Yeah, and to piggyback real quickly, Rob, on about DeBoer's demeanor, Matt mentioned how we handle loss. I think he'll be no different here than he was at Washington or Fresno State or Sioux Falls. One thing I've noticed about him, there's a genuine confidence and belief in who he is as a coach, how he does it. Yeah. But there is a humbleness, and I don't take it as manufactured at all. I think that consistency we'll see it even if the road is bumpy. I don't think. Not that he won't be pushing hard and, he wants to win, but I think demeanor-wise, my impression is that when we go in to see him on a Monday following a Saturday game, win or lose, I think he's going to be very consistent. I think he'll be consistent with us. I think he'll be consistent with the players and his staff. And I think that consistency, heard Saban always said, consistency and performance is what you're striving for. I think we'll get that from Kalen DeBoer.
Matt, one last thing. Go to YouTube, Tider Insider TV, and they list all the shows are there. So if you miss it live at 6:30, it's there. But it's great stuff. And again, it's 22 minutes of content. It's like a 30-minute show with commercials and all. But I just think when you get the local people, it's like if you're traveling to a foreign country or you're going to some new destination, you like to know, where do the locals eat? Because that's where the best seafood is. If I'm going to Orange Beach, I'm going to Doc's Seafood up there on Canal by the Publix. Can't beat that.
If you can get in, If you
can get in. I got to run, guys. Hey, Gary, great to see you, Gary.
Thanks,
talk
Matt.
soon, Rob. You guys
Thank you, Matt.
Right,
appreciate it. Gary, and it's so true. Like, here's the thing. And again, it's nothing against the national guys, but you look at SEC Network, and my idea has been for years, they're starved for content. They're showing the same stuff over and over and over again in the mornings. Why not bounce around and say, let's check in Tuscaloosa. Let's go to Gary Harris, Channel 23. Gary, you've had a chance, you and Rodney, to go to practice and blah, blah, blah. Get it from there. Because, again, when we travel, if we know someone who goes to New York a lot, we want to know. When we had Ralph Russo, AP's national college football writer, on last week, he gave us Al Delito, a new Italian restaurant in his neighborhood in Brooklyn. I'd never heard of. He goes, this is where I grew up. An Italian guy in Brooklyn that grew up telling you it's a great restaurant. I'm sold. All right, tell me this real quick. Speaking of Tuscaloosa, what's the best barbecue down there in your opinion? Because I know Coach Bryant, from him, Jackie Sherrill telling us that story, was it Archibald's where he went?
Yeah, Archibald's, Woodrow's and Archibald's, obviously Dreamland's legendary.
Yeah.
I have an association through my radio show with Who's Q and Brew, which I think is fabulous.
Now where is that?
Because rib-wise, that's over at the Northridge Center in Tuscaloosa off Highway 82.
Gotcha.
And I love it, obviously. When it comes to ribs, I'm a little bit different than most traditional Southern ribs eater. I'll eat spare ribs, but they're not my favorite. I like either St. Louis or baby back ribs. I like a smaller rib. Don't get me wrong. I'll eat the spare ribs, and when they come out at Dreamland or Archibald's, and that big plate full of those ribs that are 10 or 12 inches long and fat as your hand, they look great. But I have found for me a smaller rib that's a little more meaty with less fat around it is just what I prefer. And Who's Q and Brew, if you come to Tuscaloosa and you haven't tried it, there on Highway 82 in the Northridge Center in Tuscaloosa, right there kind of on the Tuscaloosa-Northport line. They got a little rib plate, man. It's priced well, and they're smaller. And I took a picture after I had eaten them one night, because when you eat ribs and all you see is the bone on each rib, you don't see anything else but the bone. That's a good. Every bit of that rib was edible. You know what I mean? I ate 5 ribs and there was nothing but 5 bones left. So that's pretty cool.
I'm going to bring you some ribs. MJ over here, when we get over to the farm, we'll cook like 8 or 10 slabs at a time.
Yeah.
And the baby back in St. Louis, you're right. And that's the thing that you get with local. You and Rodney getting to go out. Rodney was on Tuesday. He was driving into practice. He said the parking lot was packed. So real quick before you go, what are you going to be talking about on your show today?
Yeah, I'm loaded. I'm loaded today. Good friend of yours and a good friend of mine that comes on with me every Thursday during football season. Ellis Johnson has his weekly spot. And Ellis, last week, Ellis
was
down the
great last week.
Defense. And Ellis will be on. Kristen Jones, who was a great wide receiver at Alabama, played in the NFL and the Canadian Football League. Was helping out as an assistant at Central with DeMario Pippin, and then the coach at Paul Bryant left to go to Viger a couple weeks ago, John McKenzie. All of a sudden, Kristen Jones is head coach at Paul W. Bryant High School, which we'll have him on today, which I think is really cool, because you're talking about a former Alabama player being the head coach at Paul W. Bryant High School.
That is.
Jeff Spiegel.
Cottondale.
And Jeff Spiegel from 3340 will be with us. So looking forward to that. Tide109.com. I got to run, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah, I got the app on. I'll be watching. Thanks so much,
man.
Gary Harris. Hey,
appreciate it.
Everybody, appreciate you watching the show today. I got to ask you this, Brendan. I thought that was – I love that local, and we build a network with that Tider Insider TV. You watch what Gary and Rodney do. They take their craft seriously, and they have the respect of the coaches. They know what's going on, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if I wanted to go to Boulder and I wanted to know some good restaurants to eat, I know damn well who I would ask. It would not be Coach Prime. It would be Brendan Martin, because he grew up out there.
Well, I didn't grow up in Boulder, remember? I keep telling you.
Boulder
was
Castle
like
Heights?
it was like an hour away. Nope. Littleton, Colorado. Home of Columbine High School, that whole thing. Yeah. I went to rival high school there, but hyper local is literally something I don't know. I don't think I coined it, but I certainly was talking about it many, many years ago with Dad when we did GatorCountry.com, which was fan-based local websites.
Yeah.
I think it's the only reason that local news, continues to be a thing for, in broadcasts and towns everywhere except for Ocala. It's because it's hard to cover all the little tiny stories that make up the bigger story.
Correct.
So it's really difficult to tell the narrative from a contextual position where it's like, I this just happened here, and you don't know the backstory of all this other stuff. So we have the opportunity to do that with the internet and things of that nature that changes all of it. Because now we have interconnectivity, we can talk to each other, we can broadcast with each other, and we can share stories. So that's, look, it's no reason to go out and build all these other like big, shiny, giant, mothership type networks when we can just talk to each other and say, you're in Tennessee, you're here, you're there, you're wherever. And we can have a conversation and dialogue like we're sitting in our living room, because, that's what sports to me and to you and everybody else is about. And that's what we want to do as we frame this going forward into football season, 16 days away. Is really important. People understand that this is the type of, it's not reporting, but conversations that we want to have going forward. And, and that includes you all at home, you all in your car, you all in the plane, however you're adjusting. You can come on, you can leave us send us an email, you can write on the chat room, whatever it may be. But if you have questions and things, we know enough people around this 16 different teams, which I believe they're all connected by state now. Isn't that officially?
Look at the map behind me. All a contiguous footprint.
Yeah. So, we have the way to, because we'll know somebody that will be able to, who will be able to answer that question. And I think that's what's unique about what we're trying to do here. So, we don't mince any words.
Yeah, no, we don't. I mean, fly above, drill down local. And I agree. You go to a foreign country that maybe they speak English, but if you can speak their native tongue, you'll close the business deal. You might be eating some food you never thought you would.
Well, don't eat it.
Try it.
Try it. Don't try the tongue. It's tough.
Hey, no, machu gravy. It's good. Look, hey, thanks for everybody watching. Support all of our sponsors. Good folks like Matei's Garage and Tom Martin's Body Shop, and also Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Check them out on Facebook. The best hunting dogs, the best training. Chris Aiken and his crew, the best people you'll find anywhere. And like I said earlier, Exo Armor, check them out. We'll see you tomorrow. We've got legendary sports writer Rick Cleveland from the Jackson Clarion Ledger on. You talk about, he's one of those guys that you see like Buddy Martin and other guys, Tony Barnhart, on all these documentaries. Rick Cleveland joins the Friday College Football Roundtable. God bless America, folks. We're out of here. Have a great day.
So important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.